Welcome back to the 87 show. It's been a long time coming. I've been rather busy at work, so I haven't had as much time for doing video production. That does not mean I haven't had time to do some work on this here train layout, and we'll be seeing quite a bit about that. We'll also talk about a few minor changes in the show format, also look at some of the new toys that I've gotten, and some of my thoughts about the model railroading business that I see popping up every now and again. So stay where you are. It's all coming up right here on the 87 show. Well, progress is happening quickly on the associated railroads. Having finished laying track from Myrtle Place to the brewery, I started laying in some of the structural underpinnings required for the scenery. I started with roadways, since they would need a graded and even surface to support pavement. At the Sheridan and Decatur crossings, I used blocks of 2-inch foam insulation supported by scraps of 3/4-inch plywood. Once in place, these were marked with the appropriate dimensions of the roadway and the locations of signals and other utilities. With that done, I started making hardshell using Woodland Scenics plaster cloth and a variety of support methods depending on my mood and/or my budget. From a web of cardboard strips to wadded up paper to steel wire screen, all worked well, and once the plaster was dry, I coated these areas with a thin layer of Sculptamold. This was done to add a little extra hardness without adding too much weight. This also served to prevent the plaster cloth webbing from showing through the scenery by accident. All of this was painted with the same flat tan I've been using from 2 railroads ago. It's a nice enough tone to build upon since tan shows up just enough to highlight the big mistakes, but is not so obnoxiously white and bright that I have to chase down every tiny imperfection. As all of the track work and wiring was checked and confirmed solid, I painted the track and started scenery, using a blend of Pelle Soyborg's 1 square foot at a time method and Joe Fugate's the 1 module approach. In this way, I could focus my energy on getting as much done as possible on a single section before moving on to another, and within that I kept each pass at making scenery to a manageable amount. As an example, the small curve module is essentially complete in terms of basic ground cover and road work, so I can go back later and add the smaller details such as crossing signals, relay cabinet, signage, and trees. This is also the smallest water pour I'll have to do on the layout, so I'll start with this one when that time comes. Other modules will get as much ground cover as I can add for now, seeing as there are a number of important structures that must be in place before I go any further, such as the I-25 bridge and the warehouse on the small East Yard throat section. I have also made a slight change in the way I lay this basic ground cover. I've been gluing the bits of grass mat in place first, and then adding dirt, ballast, and other refinery on top of that. In the same way that Ken Patterson uses fake fur, the sifted dirt covers all but the actual part of the grass that I want to show and gives the appearance that it's growing up through the soil. I tend to follow with the ballast since that's how it goes in real life. The dirt was already there when they made a railroad. The one exception to this being in the yards, where I covered a thin ballast job with dirt just to make the tracks look as if it had been some time since the maintenance of way gang had been there. The industrial spurs got nothing but dirt, and I'm pretty satisfied with the result, as it's quite similar to a lot of other trackage in Denver, which seems to have little more than a fine gravel for ballast. One word of caution, the edges of the grass mat bits tend to try and peel up from the glue when wetted for scenery. I'm not sure what causes it, so I would recommend something more waterproof than wood glue to fasten these bits down with. Not everything is all grass and dirt. I've also been working on one of the smaller bridges that crosses the small stream running through the layout from Decatur to 2 creeks. In addition to that, I dug out one of my old buildings from my 2004 layout and cut it to fit right next to this bridge along with an overgrown abandoned spur track. The story behind this little scene is that it was once a rail-served paper warehouse whose fortunes did not last very long. Now it's a cleaning supplier for the food service industry. I made abutments for the bridge from various sizes of scale lumber and added a few nut bolt washer castings. I soldered together a railing for the whole affair and fixed everything but the bridge deck in place using tinted Sculptamold. The module that this scene rides on will likely be the next one considered complete for now. Again, we see the influence of the 1 module approach as I find myself more focused on finishing a section, including the structures, before moving on to another. These first 3 are just what I happen to have a lot of material for right away. Until then, trains are running well, and as I stated at the beginning, progress is happening a lot faster than expected. Let's hope I can keep up with it. While the layout gets its bits and pieces, I've also been getting a few more toys in since the last show. I managed to get one more Santa Fe SD39 in the first run paint scheme, which is fine if that's it for this particular model. I just wanted more than 2. I also got a Walthers SD9, which I will go into greater detail on in a bit, and a number of freight cars, mostly PS2 covered hoppers for the bottle plant and grains discharge at the brewery. These little roundhouse cars are quite a leap from the old MDC version, and yet the only major detail difference is that they have a much finer roof walk than the original. That, however, is pretty important since the view around this layout is at least bird's eye. I try to get at least one with every visit to Caboose, and I've also been on the lookout for cars that move my time period a little further back, although I need to do some more research before I get too carried away. Nevertheless, I have plenty of late 80s and early 90s stuff around here, and the BN SD9 was certainly a staple of yard and local power in Denver back then. Let's have a look. I said I would let you know if I saw any SD9s, and it turns out there are a few out there. One such model is from Walthers, and it's a great starting point for the kind of Denver yard power that the Associated Railroads requires. I bought the DC version both to save a little money and because I'm still waiting to see what decoders I want to use with my fleet. There's a lot of development going on in this area, so I think a little more patience will serve me well. I'm testing with DC power right now anyway, so it's a good chance to see how well this locomotive performs without all the other stuff. The model is packed as is typical for Walthers, with a couple of plastic braces in place of the couplers for stability in the package during shipping. A small bag of separate details and what appears to be a set of KD No. 5 couplers are included. These were easily installed using some tweezers and a Phillips head jeweler screwdriver, though once installed I found that the trip pin rubs up against the point of the front pilot, so a bit of adjustment may be necessary there. As far as detail goes, this model has most of it. There are a number of separately applied parts including end ladders, grab irons, roof piping, cut levers, brake piping, MU hoses, and about the smallest lift rings I've ever seen in HO scale. I actually thought these were cast-on nubbins until I turned the model and saw what they really were. Other roofline details include a firecracker antenna, rooftop beacon, which actually functions in DC mode when running forward, and horns which have been separated into a 2-chime forward set and a single chime facing rearward. The roof fans are see-through and well detailed to the point that there is a 4th fan barely visible under the winterization hatch. Paintwork is basic and clean for a BN unit, with striping on both ends suggesting that this particular prototype was a dual control unit. The number boards do light up, with the black doing a good job of masking out the numbers without too much light bleed. It's really a shame that I have to renumber this thing and ruin their good work in this regard, but that's model railroading sometimes. There does seem to be a slight flaw with the left front handrail, but given the age of this locomotive in the context of my line, I'm not going to make a fuss about it. Sometimes Cellcon can be tough on a modeler, but a little gentle heat should help straighten that out. The model ran smoothly under DC power using my trusty Tech 2 walk-around cab, both with and without momentum effects. Judging by the lack of appreciable heat buildup in the throttle after some extended operations, it doesn't seem to be very amp-hungry the way my ready-to-roll Atherns are. Overall, this unit ran the way I've come to expect from Walthers units of this level. Smooth and quiet, with great slow-speed control and no stalling over the dead switch frogs. The headlights are a realistic soft white and reach running intensity early in the DC voltage application, with the roof beacon following shortly thereafter. Lighting is directional, so much like my CB&Q U28B, the flasher effect is tied to the forward running side of that circuitry only. It also paired well with my SW1200, no surprise since they are the same class of Walthers engine, and quite fortunate as these two types were commonly paired for local service in Denver. Like most of my Walthers locomotives of this caliber, this is a fine addition to my roster and I will certainly be seeking out more of them. The good news is that I think another run might be in the offing, so a few sisters of both pre- and post-merger vintage may yet soon find their way into my engine house. In any case, this is a fine model right out of the box, and I see no reason not to do future runs of this kind. Good job, Walthers. So, some improvements, well, not really improvements, just a few changes I'm thinking of in terms of how I'm doing this show. Right now I've been doing it in a segmented format, and kind of aiming just to get the show out and try and get it out every month, and obviously I've been slacking off on that. But I would like to start doing some more shorts and things like that, just to kind of just keep chumming the water here. So basically, don't be surprised by the surprises. Um, really, I'd almost like to basically start shooting in the same style that I did on the first go round, only with steadier camera and better audio quality. Kind of like the A-roll plus or B-roll plus narration style that I've been doing. But that's all inside baseball. Just, things aren't stable yet in terms of the look of the show and how I want it to go and everything like that. I'm still this is new to me, making a show. So anyway, there's that. Now editorial time, the ugly bit. I've been seeing a lot of comments and things in live chats and things like that about bringing back the old Athearn Blue Box. And boy, what an unnecessary thing to ask for. I don't know about your memory, but mine serves me pretty well. And the Athearn Blue Box, particularly the locomotives, compared to what we have now, there is no comparison. Give you an example here. This is a mid to late 90s Blue Box Dash 9. It was about $45 when I bought it, and it was worth every penny of $45. I wouldn't accept that today. Not when the new ready-to-rolls, not even the Genesis, just the ready-to-rolls are coming in with better handrails, better detailing, prototypically accurate as much as possible, coming in with sound units and still keeping the entire package under $200. I don't miss the old Blue Box at all. The only thing I do miss is the availability. If I need it, particularly with GE U-boats, it's been extremely tough in modern times to get hold of old GEs. So maybe somebody would like to get on that. I would certainly appreciate it. But, the availability factor, it'd be nice to know that I can get an SD40-2 when I need it. Not have to, go chasing after each limited run and hope to hell that I get the ones I want in, before they all disappear. Because, boy, some go faster than others. Especially here in Denver, you put out a Rio Grande model, we are talking hotcakes here. So, but limited runs have always been a griping point in the hobby. I don't expect that to change. The other thing I saw a lot of requests for were undecorated models, and the resistance I heard, particularly from scale trains, was, well, how many shells do we have to crank out in order to put out undecorated models for each person's prototype? And my answer is 2. When you're talking, let's say, an SD40-2, there's only 2 basic body shell versions that you need to crank out. If you use removable details for roof ends and things like that, everything else should be done by the modeler. If somebody wants a prototypically perfect undecorated model, then just get the one that's painted for the prototype. There's no point in having it undecorated. Save yourself the trouble. They'll do a good job with the paint. You can renumber it. That's what I'm doing with all those Colorado and Southern SD40s that I bought from Athearn. Let them paint it. I'll just renumber it. Renumbering is easy. So, as far as undecorated, it's more for freelance guys. Like for my modern CB&Q concept, which I'll be talking about later, or my Denver and New Orleans. That's something where there really isn't an existing prototype for that. There's going to be some kit bashing and some actual, cut and putty modeling involved. And a plain vanilla locomotive, undecorated, is the perfect starting point for things like that. And that's usually who's asking for it are the freelancers. So I don't think we need to get too hung up on specific prototypes when we're going to model the thing anyway. And then, related to that, well, tangentially related to it, more back towards how much things cost, the idea that this hobby is not affordable to young people or that it's out of reach. Dirty little secret about this hobby: it's never been affordable for young people. This is not a child's hobby. Once you get beyond the train set, you kind of start getting towards teenage years, and you're still in the hobby. We're starting to move towards this at that point. We're no longer 4x8 sheet of plywood and watching the train chase its tail around there. We're looking at these days. We're looking things up online. When I was a kid, I was looking things in Model Railroader, and learning how to build a railroad from that, and going to the hobby shop and pestering everybody, that would talk to me about, hey, how do you do this? What's your glue mix for ballast? little things like that. And but it ends up costing money no matter where you're at. And some people need a basement empire. Some people only need that much. Horses for courses. But it's going to cost money because it is an adult pursuit by the time you get to this level, I think. At the very least, young adult to you're about to die. It's not toy trains at that point. So if it comes in at a price, that's what it is. That's the buy-in. I don't know what to tell you. One thing I can tell you is that the great model railroads were seldom built by children. So the train set gets you in the door, but it's up to you to then take that into model railroading beyond the toy trains and be prepared for the cost of it. Certainly Scale Trains does a nice job of coming out with things like these kit classics where it comes in a better box. It's easy to assemble. It doesn't cost that much. You can put it back into the box that it came in after you're done assembling it. That's a nice touch. You didn't get that with the old MDC or Athearn kits. I mean, with those car kits, you'd be better off wadding up a bunch of toilet paper and throwing it in a duffel bag, than to haul them in their original boxes. So, again, both of those topics kind of tie into each other. Model railroading has gotten better. State of the hobby, we're killing it. We're doing better than we ever have. It's not cheap enough necessarily for the average young person on an allowance or something like that, but that's always been the way it is. I don't think there's anything anybody's going to do about that unless you want all these guys to go broke, and then we don't have any suppliers. So anyway, that's my editorial rant for this show. So I think we'll call it there. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on the 87 Show.